Francis here from e-Mtb Review, and I have an exciting bike because this thing will launch tomorrow or right now by the time you're seeing this. And this is the Heckler SL. It is the mid-powered bike on the Santa Cruz lineup, and it's very exciting because mid-powered is kind of the hot new ticket at the moment. People have full powered and they want a second bike, and they also have a bunch of holdouts who are like, nah, I don't need that much power, or I want a bike that rides nicer. There's 5 things about this bike that I need to tell you about. It is basically like a Bronson. So Bronson is 150, 160, mixed wheel size or mullet, so to speak. So that is the base configuration. Nice geometry. It feels so supple, more supple than any Santa Cruz bike that I've tried before. The second thing you need to know about it is they've chosen the Fazua Ride 60 motor. Fazua Ride 60 you'll see on the transition relay that I reviewed, also the Pivot Shuttle SL that I've ridden quite a bunch of times, but I haven't really talked about it too much. But the Fazua Ride 60 is a compelling motor. Why? Because of 2 things. The motor is very stealth. It's longish, but the bottom bracket itself, you can't see it. So it's actually very stealth. You can't tell it's an e-bike, but the motor's right here, the battery's right here. And it has 60 Newton meters of torque and 350 watts of power. So quite a bit more than, a little more than the Trek TQ, a little bit more than the Levo SL on the spec sheet. The really compelling part is the battery. The battery that they have is pretty darn impressive. It is 430 watt hour. 430 watt hour might not sound a lot if you're coming from a 700, but bear in mind this is a mid-powered bike and this is a fairly efficient system. It disengages when you are not pedaling, so it has low drag. So 430, you compare that to a competition 320 for the Levo SL and 360 for the Trek TQ Fuel EXE. So 430 is pretty good. You'll come up with 200 watt hour extenders later on. All right, the third thing you need to know about this bike is it comes in many price points, 5 price points, and man, I applaud them for that. You know, the Ibis also, I love that bike, but they came in 1 price point, 11,000. So they need to work on that. They lowered the price now, and it's really, now it's speaking to a lot more people. And aside from 5 price points, it's pretty reasonable. So this one is the $12,000 model XO. They have I believe an XX. That one's around right under 13,000 carbon cc on these high-end models. And then on the lower models, I always complain about this, is finally they have a carbon C e-bike, because I don't really care that much if it's CC or C because I have assist. And the really cool thing on that low-end model is it is under $7,300. So very cool. That price is very approachable. You'll have the same motor, same battery, just different tidbits and whatnot. So you can choose, you can get in on the ground floor and choose to upgrade the components that you like. You know, maybe you don't like the Sram brakes and whatnot. You can choose your own. So I always try to go for that route. The 4th thing I'd love to tell you about this bike is it is kind of a SRAM shop, meaning they all throughout they have SRAM components, T-type on this version, and on the higher end version, very good drivetrain because it can shift under power. Not too much power, but you know, this thing is a mid-powered anyway. So sometimes you're caught in the wrong gear. So this is a match made in heaven. Mid-powered bike with a drivetrain that can shift under power. Really cool. The other thing is they've stuck with RockShox rear and RockShox front Lyric on the front. This one is super deluxe. Let me tell you, if you haven't ridden RockShox in a few years, they're mind-blowing now. It's the competition between Fox and RockShox. They keep leapfrogging each other, and this thing is, I haven't really tuned it that much yet, but it is so supple, so supple. I'm impressed. So finally, On the last tidbit I'd like to tell you about is the geometry and the ride quality. So my first ride, my first day, but you'll see my first descent. From the get-go, it's like an old friend. I railed that first corner, did that first jump. This thing is like butter. You know, I am kind of at the point right now, I've ridden like 20 or 30 full-powered bikes, and I'm kind of down on them at the moment because of the weight. The weight, I kind of get it, you know. For our terrain here, it's not too bad, but I went to Tahoe, you know, North Star and whatnot, and a 50-pound bike, 55-pound bike, it seems to just drag you, pound you to the ground, You know, you jump, it has to be big jumps for it to do its magic, but it's not as responsive. A bike like this, so responsive, so supple, and you'll see me boost these jumps. It's so easy for me and my videographer to like backside all the jumps today because the bike it just pops. The weight is 42 pounds with pedals on the high end, and maybe a little more, probably 45. You'll hit 45 pounds on the 7300 model. So very cool. The geometry itself, we have about a 77 seat angle right here and a 64 head angle. So even though it's a trail bike, very aggressive geometry. That's on the low setting of the flip chip. Has a flip chip somewhere, and hopefully it'll ship in low. 460 reach on the medium. This one is a large. About 478 on the reach, and I've been riding a large all afternoon. Not a problem. That's the cool thing about bikes is I still have this much dropper, and this is a large. This is a 170 or a 180. I just have more reach, so I just have to move around more. So very adaptable, these new bikes. So even though you're a classic large or classic medium, pay attention to the reach, because that you could choose the bike style that you want. Last part of the video, maybe I'll do a little deeper dive on the Fazua. The Fazua is so cool because it is so stealth. You can't really tell that it's an e-bike because the motor is completely hidden. It's just a little longer. Just say, hey, that's storage. So that's number one. The number two thing about the Fazua is it is dead quiet, dead silent on the downhill, dead quiet on the uphill. It's even more quiet today than the Trek TQ motor, which I rave about. And on the downhill, there is zero rattle. The transition has a lot of rattle, but that's because of the removable battery that they did. This one, they chose not to do a removable battery because they said no one removes their battery anyway. And there's a lot of compromises once you have a removable battery. So this way, so very stealth, looks like a Bronson. Hey, the people at Santa Cruz says, hey, it's lasting as long as our 600 watt-hour batteries because it's a more efficient motor. It's not as greedy, and let's not forget, it's going to expect more from your leg power. The quiet, torque. My first look, I'm going to have this for a few days, and they're going to send me a medium, my size. We're going to do all our power testing. I'm going to compare it with every mid-power that I have. But I would say I'm pleased. I'm jazzed. You know, when I first rode the Heckler, the Bullet, I'm like, you know, it's not quite as bleeding edge as the competition. This thing really just kind of gets at the competition and kind of leapfrogs it a little bit. So I'm pretty jazzed that Santa Cruz is offering this bike today, and with all these price points, so it's a more approachable to a lot more people. All right, thanks a ton, everybody.